Picard's Confederation timeline let TNG avoid Star Trek's mirror universe again. Star Trek has always played with the notion of alternate timelines and parallel universes, providing viewers with complex stories that probe the possibilities of what could have been. One of the most iconic and enduring alternate realities in the Star Trek universe is the mirror universe. First introduced in Star Trek, the original series TOS episode Mirror, Mirror in 1967. This universe, with its dark and twisted versions of the characters we know and love, became a cultural touchstone within the franchise. However, it was always a separate reality, one that posed intriguing moral questions, but ultimately remained a place Starfleet rarely ventured. By the time Star Trek: The Next Generation (TNG) premiered in 1987, the mirror universe had become a recognizable but dormant part of the Star Trek canon. TNG never directly explored it, instead choosing to chart its own narrative path. The decision to avoid this particular alternate timeline wasn't just a matter of storytelling preference, it allowed the writers of TNG to develop a more optimistic and complex future for humanity, rather than revisiting the more cynical and authoritarian version of the mirror universe. Fast forward to Star Trek: Picard, and we see a different kind of alternate timeline, the Confederation timeline, that provides an opportunity for the franchise to explore dark versions of its universe without resurrecting the mirror universe's overused tropes. The Star Trek: Picard series, which follows Jean-Luc Picard well after the events of TNG, presented a fresh twist on alternate realities in its second season. The Confederation timeline is a dystopian parallel timeline where the United Federation of Planets never came into existence. Instead, Earth is ruled by the Confederation, a fascist, militaristic regime hell-bent on conquering alien species. The Confederation timeline, while distinct from the mirror universe, allows the show to engage in a similar kind of speculative storytelling, asking what happens when the ideals of Starfleet are twisted into something darker and more dangerous. At the same time, it also allows TNG to maintain its separation from the mirror universe, preserving the utopian vision of the 24th century that TNG established. Why the mirror universe never appeared in The Next Generation? The decision to avoid the mirror universe in TNG was likely a conscious choice by Gene Roddenberry and the show's writers to differentiate it from TOS. The mirror universe had already been revisited several times by TOS and later Deep Space Nine DS9. TNG, with its more evolved and philosophically grounded tone, sought to present a future where humanity had overcome its baser instincts. The mirror universe, in contrast, is a place where humanity's worst impulses are magnified and celebrated. The existence of the Terran Empire, with its xenophobia and brutality, was fundamentally at odds with the Federation's ethos of peaceful exploration, diversity, and cooperation. By the time TNG was developing its voice, Roddenberry's vision of the future had also matured. The future in TNG was not just an optimistic projection of humanity's potential, but a fully realized society where poverty, war, and inequality had been eradicated. The characters in TNG are more evolved, both morally and intellectually, than their predecessors in TOS. They are better equipped to handle complex diplomatic and ethical challenges, and as such, throwing them into the chaos of the mirror universe would have felt like a regression. It would have been too easy to contrast the good characters of the Prime universe with their evil counterparts in the mirror universe, but that simplicity wasn't what TNG was about. Instead, TNG thrived on nuanced storytelling that delved into moral dilemmas, the nature of humanity, and the role of technology in society. Episodes like The Measure of a Man, The Drumhead, and Dharmic explored these themes in ways that didn't require the heavy-handed dichotomy of good versus evil that the mirror universe embodies. TNG's decision to avoid the mirror universe can also be seen as a statement about the show's overall philosophy. Rather than dwell on humanity's dark side, TNG chose to explore how humanity could transcend it. The Confederation timeline, a new kind of darkness. When Star Trek: Picard introduced the Confederation timeline in its second season, it offered a fresh perspective on an alternate dystopian future without relying on the mirror universe's established framework. In this timeline, Earth's history had been altered by the intervention of Q, creating a world where the Federation was replaced by the Confederation, a brutal human supremacist regime that seeks to dominate the galaxy through force and fear. Unlike the Mirror Universe's Terran Empire, which is rooted in the concept of a morally inverted version of the Prime Universe, the Confederation timeline is more a reflection of the dangers that exist within our own reality. It shows what might happen if the Federation's values of tolerance, diplomacy, and exploration were replaced by militarism, xenophobia, and authoritarianism. The Confederation is an exaggerated version of the worst aspects of human history, drawing on real-world fascist and imperialist regimes to paint a chilling picture of what the future could look like if humanity abandoned its ideals. The Confederation timeline allows Picard to explore a darker version of its universe without falling into the same narrative traps as the Mirror Universe. While the Mirror Universe relies on the idea of evil twins and moral inversions, the Confederation timeline is more subtle in its critique of power and corruption. It shows that the darkness in humanity isn't simply an alternate version of our reality, but something that can emerge from within if we're not vigilant in protecting our values. This distinction is crucial because it allows Picard to engage in political and social commentary that feels more relevant to contemporary audiences. The Confederation timeline doesn't exist as a mirror of the Prime Universe, but as a warning about the fragility of democracy and the dangers of unchecked power. In this way, Picard is able to explore many of the same themes as the Mirror Universe, such as the corrupting influence of power, the consequences of authoritarianism, and the importance of individual agency, without rehashing the same tropes that had already been explored in other Star Trek series. A legacy of hope by avoiding the Mirror Universe in TNG and instead opting to explore a different kind of dystopia in Picard, the Star Trek franchise is able to maintain the integrity of its core values. The Mirror Universe, while fascinating, is ultimately a place where hope is crushed and morality is a weakness. The Confederation timeline, on the other hand, shows that even in the darkest timelines, there is still hope for redemption. In Picard, we see Jean-Luc and his crew fighting to restore the Prime Universe, even when they are trapped in a world that is fundamentally opposed to everything they believe in. This fight for a better future is what defines Star Trek as a whole, and it's what sets it apart from other science fiction franchises. While other shows might revel in the darkness of alternate realities, Star Trek always holds on to the possibility of change and growth. The decision to create the Confederation timeline instead of revisiting the Mirror Universe is a testament to the franchise's commitment to innovation and its desire to remain relevant to modern audiences. The Mirror Universe, with its black and white morality, might have been exciting in the 1960s, but in today's world, we need more nuanced explorations of power, politics, and ethics. The Confederation timeline offers that complexity while still remaining true to the core ideals of Star Trek. Conclusion: the choice to avoid the Mirror Universe in the next generation allowed the series to chart its own path, focusing on a future of moral complexity, hope, and growth. This tradition continues in Star Trek Picard, where the introduction of the Confederation timeline offers a fresh take on dystopian futures without relying on the familiar and perhaps overused tropes of the Mirror Universe. In doing so, the Star Trek franchise has ensured that its exploration of alternate realities remains dynamic and thought-provoking, while staying true to its optimistic vision of humanity's future. The Confederation timeline lets Star Trek evolve without losing sight of the ideals that have always defined it.